them looking at me when I'm walking past the mirror. Don't stress through the night at a time in my life. Ain't worried about if you feel it. Got my head on straight, I got my vibe right. I ain't gonna let you kill it. See, I won't change my life just fine.
Hello and welcome to A Seat at the Table. I'm Christine White.
And I'm Monica Pearson, and today we're talking about raising black boys into mentally and physically strong black men.
I'm Deneen Milner. 72% of black children are raised by single parents. Can a black male child really learn everything he needs to know from a woman?
I just don't want to see you end up dead or in jail. A drunk standing in front of one of these liquor stores.
What's up, Trey? What's up, Doughboy?
Well, there goes your son. You wanted him, you got him.
Why are you trying to make this so easy?
Well, it's like you told me. I can't teach him how to be a man. That's your job.
Yes, Lord. I'll tell you what.
So I have daughters. I gave birth to daughters, but I have a stepson. And when he was 14, he had his boys in the hood moment. His mother sent him to live with us. And we raised him in our house from age 14 through college. And first of all praises to his mother for being able to be that character. Neva, I think her name was Reva or Neva, and she dropped her son off and said, "It's your turn. I need him to be with you."
Right.
And I don't know that I would be able to send my child across the country to live with anyone. I carried this baby in my womb. So, you know, all praises to her for having the strength to do that, but all praises to my husband for stepping up, doing what he always has done as a father, and taking on the responsibility to take this 14-year-old almost man and turn him into a man.
Because there comes a time, literally, when boys need a male influence. Because we as mothers, and I have a stepson, but he was grown when his dad and I got married, and I have a daughter. So raising a boy is different. It's not
Right.
something I know how to do.
Absolutely.
But I do know women who have raised children, boys on their own. And the two things I've learned very quickly from other mothers is the difference between boys and girls. Women tend to be more nurturing, and dads need to come in with the discipline. Boys, even from in the uterus, they are more active because they get more testosterone. So when they come out, they are more fidgety. They are more into everything. So you're dealing with that. And so you've got to have someone who can take control of that. And then with boys, they don't get impulse control until they're almost 21 or
Right.
older,
Right.
because that's just the way they're wired. And we as mothers want to love them and nurture them, but sometimes you just need to have somebody who can put a foot up there behind.
Well, and so, you know,
Basically.
there's
Basically.
two
That's what it
sides of
boils
this
down to.
story, though. We're having a conversation in this country about gender and about gender fluidity and about whether or not we should be forcing children to replicate gender norms. And while I believe that every child who has an opportunity to have time with a father, it's important for them to have a father. I have also heard mothers say he would be better off not knowing his daddy. Now, I'm not sure that I believe in that either. I mean, not having a dad is just another obstacle, and anyone can overcome obstacles. But if you have an opportunity to have a mother and a father in your life, I think that it's important. And I bring up the gender norm situation just because I hear it so much. But in this world where you are treated based on the way you look and the sex that you appear to be, I think it's important, particularly for black men, to know how to carry themselves as a black man and not get shot down in the street or not get played or not get tried.
Right. But and I'm speaking from experience here with a boy who came to live with us as a teenager.
Right.
He was smelling himself
Right.
with his mother. And he needed a man in his life to be able to help him walk the line between standing up for yourself
Right.
and knowing when you need to stand down.
Right.
Knowing how to get home safe, knowing how to get out of a situation where you still can be who you are as a man, but still make it home alive. And I don't know that I could teach him that. I don't know that his mother could teach him that, because we aren't treated like black boys in the
Right.
street.
No,
we
that's
are not
true.
treated like black men in the street.
Right.
So I don't know what it means to be a black man getting stopped in a cop car, getting stopped by cops, or, you know, having another boy test me in that kind of way. And so what we needed was for him to be with his father so that his father could show him the things that he's been through as a black man and how to navigate that. And there's no way that I could have done that.
And boys feel like they need to protect the women in their lives before they are ready to be the protection. And only another strong black male can show them the steps to take. We're going to talk some more about that in just a minute. We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, a black man will share his perspective on how to transform black boys into strong black men.
Let me see your registration now. Get out of the car! Put your hands up where I can see them now!
He put me in the back with cuffs on, right? He told me he was taking me in. He was being nice to me, sort of, you know, talking to me. I tried to tell him that I was your son, but he didn't believe me. And he drove past the police station. He said we were going for a ride. You know, that's when he stopped being nice. You know, out of nowhere, he said that he hated fancy talking niggas. You know, that I sounded like I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth.
Listen, when I saw that on TV, whew, Pastor Al Holly joins us at the table. He's a youth pastor and community activist, and he was raised by a single mother and his grandmother. Pastor Al, what's your take on all of this?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you ladies on today. My take on this is being a person who was raised by a single mother who was pregnant with me as a teenager and a widowed grandmother in the city of Atlanta. I believe that black women can empower sons to be all that they can be and to grow in all that they should be. Because I had two strong black women in my lives. And I can honestly tell you the truth that because of them, I am who I am today.
About that?
But you're also a father, you're married, you have a 17-year-old son.
Yes.
But because you did not have your father in your life,
Yes.
how did you learn to be a father?
Well, thank you, Monica. My father went to prison when I was 5 years old. And I can remember the day that he went to prison. I can remember the day that he was arrested. And so the way I learned to be a father was to learn not to do what I witnessed him do. And in essence, I can recall one of my fondest memories growing up as a young boy. We were all in the bed with my mother in our apartment on Hollywood Road. And I never forget this. My mother was looking out the window, and there was a gentleman who would always come home every single day. And when he would come home, he would always open the door for his wife. And I remember my mother saying, "Man, I wish Alan would do that for me." And it was at that moment that I realized that I need to do all I can do to become a great man. And so I really learned how to be a father and a great man by watching what not to do.
Right. So, you know, I assume that there were men around you in your neighborhood. How important is it for young men and young women without fathers to have these male roles in their lives?
It's very important because I do realize and understand that my mother and my grandmother, as strong as they were as black women, could not raise me by themselves. They could not give me everything that I needed to become the man that I have grown to become. And so For that reason, we're thankful for the coaches in the community, for the pastors who are in the community, and for uncles and all of those type of people. Because to be honest with you, when you are raised without a father being in the home, then your uncles become fathers.
Yeah.
Then, you know, big cousins become father. Anybody who's a man becomes a father figure. And so eventually we become like what we see. And so we get a chance to see that in growing up.
So, Reverend Holly, the big question for me becomes, when you talk about us living in a mobile society, there may not be men in your neighborhood that you know or that you can trust that you want to work with your son. And there are a lot of single moms who are still having to raise their son. You talked about your grandmother saying, you know, he needs to respect women by opening the doors.
Yes.
What are the kinds of things you set for your son? Because most men growing up know to be the breadwinner and to be protective. And the women are, quote unquote, the nurturers. But what else is it important for a father to do so that that boy can open up to him? Unlike the young man in the video that we just saw, he didn't tell his dad until much later.
Well, I think it's important for a father to instill in his son or daughter a sense of identity, a sense of pride, a sense of who they are, what they represent, where they come from, and where they're going. I feel like if you don't instill that in your son or your daughter, then a lot of times they can get lost in the shuffle. So I would say to those mothers who may be out there and you may not have an uncle around, or you may not have, you know, a coach or anything like that, I would say to continue just to love your son, continue to love your daughter like never before, and pour into them all that you can, because as much as you pour into them, that is what's going to come out of them.
So it means, how do you teach them to make good choices? Because for boys, impulse comes first.
Right.
But how do you teach them to make good choices?
I think you teach them to make good choices one step at a time, one decision at a time. My son, we always had this old adage that good choices, good consequences, great choices, great consequences, bad choices, bad consequences. So from a very young age, we always talked about the power of a choice, because every day, whatever decisions you make can determine if you get a chance to make another decision. And so what I believe is that you can always instill in your children on the power of choice every single day, because that's going to be the deciding factor.
Well, when you talk about choices, that means when, as a black male, you get stopped by a police officer, and I know you have been stopped. How do you teach your son, and how did you handle it?
I've always taught my son this one thing. If you're ever stopped by the police, always be obedient so you can tell your side of the story. Always listen and be respectful, because you get a chance to do it again. I can tell you this one instance where my son and I were actually driving in the car together, and we actually were stopped by the police. And it happened at an event. My son was listening to some music that I didn't want him listening to. And so it just so happened on my way home, I had seen a crime scene. And I seen this crime scene, so I put my son in the car, and we drove up to the crime scene about a few blocks away from it, just to show him, because I wanted to show him, like, if you digest certain things inside of you, what comes out and what type of behavior that it leads to. And I never forget, when we left the scene on our way back home, we got pulled over by the police officer who had came from that crime scene. And he asked me, did I have anything to do with that crime scene back there? Now, the crazy part about it was he came to the car with his gun and asked us to put our hands outside of the window and all that type of stuff. Here I am, a University of Alabama alumni graduate, tag on the back of my car and things of that nature, suit, bow tie on, coming home from work. You know I didn't have anything to do with that crime scene, but he pulled me over. But I think I demonstrated in front of my son that day the best way to handle yourself when you get stopped by the cops is just be obedient so you can live to tell your side of the story.
Well, I can tell you, my husband has been in law enforcement for over 30 years, and he gets stopped.
Wow.
And he does exactly what you said.
Wow.
He will tell the officer, I'm going to get my license. He keeps his hands on the wheel. He does everything properly. Because he said, if you don't, it can end up, for a black male, costing you your life.
My husband wrote a book called Justice While Black, and it's about it's written specifically for teenagers and their families, so that you know what your rights are when you get pulled over and how to get home, so that you can tell the story later. That's exactly what it is. But, you know, he's taught the book in schools, and kids right now feel like, you know, they're very outspoken, very boisterous. They feel like they have the right to their right to mouth off. And to them, it doesn't feel like mouthing off. It's just standing up for myself.
Yes.
Well, baby, there's a way to stand up for yourself.
Exactly.
At that point, when he has his hand on a holster, is not that point.
Exactly.
And so, you know, thank goodness that you were able to show your son by example how to handle it.
You know what I've noticed is that a lot of young men who are raised by single mothers don't know how to treat women.
Yeah.
And I think that's as a result of not seeing their mother being treated a certain way, and maybe even some of the negative stereotypes that mothers pass down to their sons about women. What have you taught your son about women and how to treat women?
Well, the first thing I taught my son about how to treat women was to watch the way I treat his mother. And if he can observe the way I treat his mother, then he'll know how to treat a woman. Because I learned at a very young age that my mother used to always tell me, she used to always say, if you have to put your hands on a woman, if you have to disrespect a woman, then you don't need to be with that woman. And I say that because I can remember being a little boy, 5 years old, seeing my mother and my father fight. I can remember seeing them. I can remember seeing my mother being choked and begging my father to let her breathe and things of that nature. And so I can remember seeing the tears that she shed. And so inside of me was always a point where I never wanted to see my wife cry or never wanted to make my mother cry. And so my whole thing was to show my son how to treat a woman by the way I treated his mother. And he would always get it right.
And that also, you know, a good father also helps a girl determine the kind of man she will marry. Because she can see that loving, caring, protective, supporting nature in that man. But then boys do tend to rear up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so how does a mom, because we do have a lot of women raising sons on their own, how does a mom deal with a boy who's smelling himself?
And, you know, I think that's the $1 million question, Monica, because as a man, you know, when I see my son, you know, buck up, it was kind of a sense of relief. And I would say that because, you know, you don't want to raise a son or a young man who would be somewhat timid in this world. Or who would allow anybody to treat them any type of way. And so at the first sign of bucking up, it's kind of like a relief, like, hey, okay, we got some testosterone going. We got a man here, like he's not just gonna settle for anything and take anything. But that's a right way to raise up and a wrong way to raise up. And so what I would say to any mother out there who has a son who is raising up in the wrong way, I would say to her, to love your son, but to also discipline him in the way that would show him the respect that needs to be displayed for a woman. And I would also say that, you know, find men, positive men, coaches, youth pastors, you know, in ministries and things of that nature to put your son around so that he can see how to handle certain situations. Because I think when children or sons buck up, it's all because they're trying to find their way and trying to get their voice heard, coming into their own worldview. And so that's what it's really all about. I'm trying to become my own man.
That's so funny because I always remember my father, my nieces and nephews' grandfather, lowering his voice when he talked to the boys. Like, I'd never heard my dad's voice. He has 2 girls. I've never heard his voice get that deep. But he was very aware that for the first time, he had an opportunity to influence a male child who was his blood. And when he talked to that male child, it was completely different than when he talked to me, which, you know, I think is appropriate. But it was it was weird to hear him have to put that bass in his voice and have to like kind of buck at a baby, like.
Right.
But you have to start that way.
Yeah. You have to because, you know, men are wired differently. You know,
Lord, yes.
We, you know, we understand authority, but a lot of times we also buck against authority. And so as a man, you have to display authority in order to receive respect. Does that make sense to you what I'm saying?
I've never heard it put that way, but yes, that makes a lot of sense.
This isn't just a conversation for or a condition of single moms.
Yes.
Like you can be in a 2-parent household and have those kinds of challenges, right?
Exactly. I can recall when I was teaching, I could always tell the children who came from a single-parent household and the children who came from a 2-parent household.
What was evident? What was evident?
It was always evident in their, first of all, their behavior. The second thing was evident in their response to discipline. Whenever I seen a young man who came from a 2-parent household, his response to discipline would be totally okay. Like I've been disciplined before.
Right.
But
Used to
whenever
this.
you do it for a child that comes from a single parent household, they would always tend to buck up. They would always tend to, you know, get mad and get angry because they're not used to being disciplined by a man. And so I could always tell by that way.
Wow.
That's the reason why I've always liked to see male elementary
Right.
school
Yes.
Right.
teachers.
Yes.
Because when I was reading in the Atlanta Public Schools, oftentimes the boys, even in the first grade,
Yes.
were already trying the female teachers.
Well, I've seen this happen, and I've seen it even amongst my daughter's friends that, you know, going to a primarily white school, that these young black men, they not imitate, but they act this very similar to the white men or white young men in their grade, and it frightens me to death because I see them smelling themselves. I see them sort of with this swagger that is reflective of white privilege that they've sort of been picking up on, and I know that you try the same thing that this young white man tries, they will put you under the jail. You talk to that young white woman the same way that another white man talks to her, they will
put you out of school.
put you out.
Or understand that, you know, when you walk into a workplace, you're gonna have to work
Right.
3
Twice as
times as hard
Right.
as your white male counterpart in order to get just half of what he has.
And it's so important that our young men understand that the privileges that are allowed for white men don't necessarily apply to them. Now, it's hard to teach that and also teach pride and also teach confidence, you know?
Well, this gets me to a historical fact that I think we need to deal with. Do you think, or how will we ever get over what was done to us in slavery? Because remember, men were used basically for breeding, women were used basically for breeding, fathers were not allowed to take care of their children, mothers in most instances saw their children given away, so you never had, except in very small instances, what is called a family.
Yes.
So how do we get past this?
Well, in my opinion, the way that we get past it is to get the system to stop stomping on us like we're still in that system, like we're still in the middle of all of the different, you know, things that were done to us. If you still have an educational system that disciplines black boys and girls differently from white boys and girls, if you have a, you know, a social system, the prison system is treating black folks differently from the way that they treat white folks, it's kind of hard to act differently when you're being treated the same way.
Well, let me mention something to you very quickly. My husband is Deputy Director of Residential Services for the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice. He says the majority of the children who are in that system are boys. They are black boys, and the majority of them come from single-parent, female-run households.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to say thank you for, you know, we opened this conversation with me saying, I don't know that I could raise a black boy. And I did. I helped to raise a black boy. But I love what you had to say about making it so that you understand that you do have those resources in your community. There are pastors like you. There are teachers out there. There are coaches out there who care deeply for our children, and that the resources are there if we reach out to tap into them. And as black women, the one thing we know how to do is tap into our resources, right? And so
Amen to
I
that.
appreciate you for saying that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And my thought, I guess, my final thought on this would be is simply what the 100 Black Men of America has as their slogan.
Yes.
And they say simply, what they see is what they'll be.
That's right.
So it's incumbent upon us to make sure our black boys are involved with organizations and black men that they want to emulate.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And what I would simply say to every mother out here who may be raising a single child by yourself, you are not in it alone. I know it may appear that you're in it alone, but you're not in it alone. And I want you to know that if you be not weary and well doing, in due season you'll reap if you faint not. So whatever you do, don't
Preach.
give up.
Preach.
Don't give up.
Here we
Don't
go.
give up. I promise you.
Yeah, and I know that it's our responsibility. I mean, it takes a village. That is more than just an adage or a saying. And we got to figure out how we can incorporate all of our children all around us. My aunt used to say, if there is a child in need in your vicinity, then your responsibility is to help that child. And so we have to live by that and teach that.
Absolutely. I want to thank you, Pastor Holly, for joining us here at the Seat at the Table. You were spectacular.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have to go, but the conversation doesn't end here.
Share your thoughts with us on social media.
And we're on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Pinterest at ASATT TV.
Thanks for joining us for A Seat at the Table. And in the words of Shirley Chisholm, if they don't give you a seat at the table,
bring a folding chair.
Yeah.
You make sure you live to fight your case in court. You hear me?
Oh, Mama, enough. Wake up. Let's say they listen to the cops and get in the car. Look what happened to Freddie Gray.
Yeah, and what if they make it all the way to the station? You remember Sandra Bland?
And let's say they do make it to trial. You see where that gets us? Don't you get it, Bo? The system is rigged against us.
Maybe it is, Dre. But I don't want to feel like my kids are living in a world that is so flawed that they can't have any hope.